It's a gorgeous day today. Geez, Saturday, and I'm up early because I got a lot of work to do in the house. But I thought I'd take a few minutes to talk about my bass guitar. All right. Well, got a long history with this thing here. I bought it around late '88, early '89, somewhere in the winter time, I think, around that time. And even though there's dispute as to when I bought it, because recently a video was unearthed of me playing a gig with some friends of mine, and I'm playing bass on that gig with this guitar. And he says it was '85, and I'm like, I didn't know it in '85. Matter of fact, I did some research and looked at the back catalogs of the Fernandez bass. This is a Fernandez model, the PJ50, and they only came out in '88. So, and it was a new model when I bought it, I remember, right? Brand new, and it was a very recent issue. So take that as evidence that we didn't play that gig in '85. It was more like, I'm going to say '89-ish. Anyway, and the reason why I bought the bass is kind of a funny story. I've been playing a little bit of bass before that, but usually just borrowing someone's bass, or I was renting it or whatever it is. I didn't have my own to play on. So I was working at a music store in the rental department, and it was a Saturday, and when it's not busy and stuff, you can learn the gear, right, and take some time with the different things we had for rent. So I was dicking around with a bass guitar, and I was slapping and that kind of thing. And a guy came in, he was renting something, someone else was serving him, but about a week later, that guy called back in the store and said, "Hey, who was that curly, long-haired guy in the rental department there?" And they said, "Well, you must be thinking of Tony." So they put the phone call to me. I'm talking to the guy on the phone. Says, "Hey, I was in there last week and I saw you playing bass, right?" And I go, "Okay, yeah, thanks." And he says, "Well, I need a bass player. I'm looking for someone to replace the guy who's leaving." And I go, "Well, I'm not really a bass guitarist. I'm a guitar player. I just mess around a bit on bass." He goes, "Well, you sounded pretty good to me, so would you mind coming in to audition?" And this was for an Italian wedding band. And in the late '80s or in the '90s, Italian wedding bands, they made pretty good cakes. So I found out who the guy was, and I learned who the band was. And I went into the audition and I got the gig. And I played with them for a whole season, and I got fired. To this day, it's the only band I think I've ever been fired from. I've quit a couple of bands in my day, but I've never been fired before. Well, except for that one. And so anyway, that's a whole other story, I suppose. But anyhow, so that's the need to buy a bass once I had that gig. So I got this sucker, and it wasn't particularly cheap. Fernandez PJ50 model, like I said. Was a pretty good, still is a pretty good make of guitars. They made quality stuff. It was all imitation. In other words, they were copies of the bigger guitar manufacturers, but at a much lower price, but still a good quality. You can get a comparable instrument if you bought a Fernandez for like half the price of what the big boys were selling them for. So I really liked their guitars, and so when I got time to buy a bass, I said, I think I'm going to get a Fernandez bass, and I think it cost them like $700, and this is '88 money, right? So it was the most expensive guitar I've ever owned up until recently, I think. So anyway, it's a nice instrument. It's lasted all these. It's in mint condition because I hardly ever take it out of the house anymore. That's for sure. But the bass guitar is a fantastic instrument. It's incredibly important. It's more important than people realize. If you take the bass tracks out of your favorite songs, it'll sound terrible. So people mock and laugh at bass players all the time. "Oh, he's a bass player. Oh my God, I slept with the bass player. What was I thinking?" That whole joke. Well, never mind. You're looking at a person who's incredibly important to the band that they're in, and if you do remove them, I'm sorry, you are missing something. I love the White Stripes, but they're missing a bass player. Love the Doors, missing a bass player. Well, they use them in the studio, but live, Ray would play the keyboard parts, play bass there, but it's not quite the same, And I think it needs a little more respect in music than it does get. Now, mind you, in things like funk, you need a good funky that's the word, bass player who can slap and do some pretty cool grooves. It really is the meat of the song is the groovy bass lines. I mean, even Queen when they did No One Bites the Dust, like that's the whole tone of the song right there, and that is a funk song. Let's face it. And in jazz, of course, bass is way more important than the guitar is. You don't need a guitar player in a jazz group necessarily, but you need a good bass player. You need a guy who can get in there and do some you need somebody who can really lay down some incredibly low harmonic foundations. So this is a fantastic instrument. It really is. And this bass is doing great for me. I mean, it's not necessarily the best sounding bass in the world. It would be really cool if I replaced these with EMG pickups. Maybe someday I will. But I don't use it that much and that importantly, I suppose, is the word I'm looking for. And I need to get upgraded like pickups and stuff like that. But maybe someday when I feel like it. But in the meantime, if I have a bass player coming in with their own knacks, that they have their sound, well, that's what we use, right? But if I'm just laying down some demos, which I do oftenly, is that a word? Okay. It is now. Then this thing has been fantastic to have, and it's been a great friend. It's nice to see this thing in the closet. Nice to see it on the wall sometimes. I hang it up. I got a long history with it, and just want to say hello. Hello. Have a good one. Bye.